If you had 38 minutes to live, what would you do? Personally, I'd hope this forensic round wouldn't take 45 minutes. 7 people in this round? That's not likely. For us, this is just a fun what-if situation. But for 1.4 million people in Hawaii, when their phones read ballistic missile inbound to Hawaii, this was their gut-wrenching reality. While nuclear bombs are obviously scarier than nuclear reactors and nuclear energy are still serious topics. Nuclear energy actually plays a huge role in the lives of people around the globe. But it isn't just a global resource, it's one that's found right here, right on the shores of the Great Lakes region. With society understanding so little about nuclear energy, it's important that you know the basics. Today, I will discuss how nuclear energy works, its history, its use today, its future, but most importantly, how it affects our Great Lakes state. Before we can begin, it is important that we understand how nuclear energy powers our world. Nuclear energy is simply the conversion of the energy found in the nucleus, or center of an atom, into usable electricity, according to the Nuclear Energy Institute, also known as the NEI. Let's take a closer look at this process. First, an atom is split in the core, releasing energy in the form of radiation. This radiation produced goes on to heat and boil water, which eventually turns into steam. Next, this steam powers a group of large turbines, which then sends energy to the generator. Lastly, this generator creates usable electricity from the energy produced by the turbines. This process is seen by many, including the NEI, as a clean source of energy which releases no pollution into our atmosphere. Nuclear may have even prevented up to 1.8 million pollution-related deaths, and may prevent up to 7 million more, according to NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. However, nuclear energy creates harmful byproducts. The main byproduct of this process is spent nuclear fuel. Spent nuclear fuel is not only radioactive, but it is full of harmful chemicals which can take thousands of years to become less harmful. If these hazardous materials were somehow exposed, it could jeopardize the health of people around the globe. Now that we know how nuclear energy works, let's take a look at how it lit up our history. The first nuclear power plant opened in 1960. However, the real rise of nuclear energy came after the Second World War, when nuclear energy was used to help further develop nuclear bombs, nuclear ships, and even nuclear submarines. And in the 1970s, when a series of conflicts in the Middle East caused oil prices to skyrocket, there was an even greater incentive to harness this new energy source. In the years between 1970 and 1985, over half of the nuclear power plants around the globe were built, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. 15 of these plants were built in the Great Lakes region, as the Great Lakes could provide the huge amounts of water needed to power these plants. Some of these plants were built in Michigan, on both the eastern and western sides of the state. At the time, many were happy about this, as nuclear energy could help reduce pollution and could help prevent an oil spill from occurring in the Great Lakes. However, some claimed nuclear would do more harm than good. They claimed the water intake from these plants would kill thousands of fish living in the Great Lakes, and many were worried about the possibilities of a nuclear disaster. If a nuclear disaster were to occur, major metropolitan areas including Toronto, Detroit, Chicago, and Cleveland would all have to be evacuated, and a major source of food and water would be threatened. Today, this argument for and against nuclear energy continues to be a conflict. Now, let's discuss how nuclear energy illuminates our lives today. Currently, 3 nuclear power plants in Michigan continue to operate, according to Michigan's Department of Environmental Quality. However, the plant in South Haven is being planned to close in 2022. While you can close a plant, the question arises on, what do you do with the spent nuclear fuel? According to the Detroit Free Press, 60,000 tons of spent nuclear fuel is being stored right on the shores of the Great Lakes. Currently, Michigan keeps its spent nuclear fuel where it was produced, in the plant, no matter if the plant has been shut down or not. However, the Canadians are planning on building a storage facility in Kincardine, Ontario, which could hold this refuse. Kincardine is located on the shore of Lake Huron. Thousands on both sides of the border are outraged by this plan as they are worried about the possibilities and consequences of a radiation leak. If a radiation leak were to occur in the interconnected Great Lakes, millions of people would be poisoned, and maybe even more if radiation made its way down the St. Lawrence River and Mississippi River waterways. And recent nuclear disasters, such as the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011, which required permanent evacuations in Japan, raised new questions about the safety of nuclear energy and nuclear storage. With greater awareness about the possibilities and consequences of a nuclear disaster, many are calling for this proposed facility to be moved. However, the CNSC, or Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, claims that this proposed facility in Kincardine will provide a permanent and safe solution to the issue of storage of spent nuclear fuel. Now, many might ask, is nuclear energy flickering, or is it brightening our future? The last nuclear power plant opened in the 1970s. With no new planned openings and the planned closures, nuclear energy is at least declining here. However, this is not the case around the globe. Many rapidly developing countries, such as China and India, are looking to nuclear energy to provide a sustainable and clean source of energy. China and India alone are planning to build over 20 plants within the next 10 years, according to the World Nuclear Association. The US is only planned to build one. And many newer, and some argue safer, forms of energy, such as wind, solar, and geothermal energy, are becoming more popular over nuclear. And many are worried about the possibilities of a nuclear disaster, making it much less attractive. But what happens if there was a nuclear disaster? While the chances of a nuclear disaster are quite slim, there are some precautions you can take to stay safe. According to Ready.gov, the most important precaution you can take is limiting your exposure to the radiation. This can either be done by evacuation or by staying inside. Today, we discussed how nuclear energy works, its history, its use today, its future, and how it affects our Great Lakes state. Nuclear energy is a very complex topic, with its diverse effects on ecosystems and lifestyles in the Great Lakes region. Thankfully, those in Hawaii were relieved to hear that in fact, there was no missile inbound. But in those 38 minutes, nuclear had the power to change our lives. Nuclear has the energy to change yours too.